They dragged the plus-size superintendent through the marble lobby like trash and called her the Saboteur. Residents screamed as Roman Vale killed the power to his own tower, but Tessa Bell ignored the guards. Cracked a pressure valve, exactly 1/4 turn, and caught blue antifreeze in her glove. Residential pipes should have carried clear water. Someone had connected the rooftop reserve loop to the tenant's heat. Then, a hidden pump started overhead. With his family vote at dawn, the ruthless Mafia boss gave Tessa control of the Dark Tower and ordered every armed man inside to obey her. They dragged plus-size building superintendent Tessa Bell through the lobby, and Roman Vale killed the tower's power himself. One guard twisted her right arm behind her coveralls, while the other pulled a fistful of navy fabric above her bruised wrist. Her steel-toed boots scraped across polished stone. Boiler dust streaked her full hips and broad stomach. Frightened residents packed the marble staircase beneath dead crystal fixtures, wrapped in coats and hotel blankets as winter pressed against the glass. Roman stood beside the emergency breaker, in a black Tom Ford suit untouched by grease or rain. He lowered the steel handle. 40 floors vanished into darkness. Red exit strips blinked awake along the baseboards. The guards kept dragging. Tessa planted both boots and stopped them with the weight they had mistaken for weakness. "Release my hands or lose the heating loop." Roman looked at the blue fluid dripping from her wrench. "Release her." The guard holding her sleeve hesitated. Roman shifted his attention to the man's fingers. That was an order, not a negotiation. Both guards stepped away. Tessa rolled her right shoulder once, then crossed the lobby toward a brass radiator enclosure. The cheap fabric of her coveralls followed the powerful curve of her body as she knelt without asking anyone to clear space. A pipe knocked behind the wall. 8 seconds passed. It struck again. She pulled an adjustable wrench from her belt and loosened the pressure cap exactly 1/4 turn. A thin stream struck her glove. Blue antifreeze shone beneath the emergency lights. Residential heating water should have been clear. The reserve circuit on the roof carried glycol because exposed coils could freeze. The two systems were designed never to touch. Tessa held the stained glove where Roman could see it. Someone crossed the rooftop reserve into the tenant loop. Calder Wren pushed through the security line in a charcoal overcoat. His silver hair remained dry despite the sleet outside. "She maintains both circuits." "That proves access." Tessa rose slowly, her back straight and her chin level. "It proves the crossover exists." "Your conclusion requires a command path." Wren pointed toward her tool belt. Security found the bypass key on her. Tessa looked at the brass key hanging from a red tag. "Every superintendent carries one. Try evidence next." A hidden pump started somewhere above them. The vibration traveled down the supply riser and through the radiator casing beneath Tessa's palm. The building had no legal power. Roman had cut the main feed, disabled the automation panels, and isolated the generator from mechanical service. Yet, the pulse continued. Tessa counted 3 cycles and moved toward the locked service door. A guard blocked her with his forearm. Roman remained beside the breaker. "She moves." The guard lowered his arm. Tessa opened the riser cabinet and pressed 2 fingers against the copper return. Heat climbed the pipe from above. Instead of rising from the basement, the pump drew from an independent source near the penthouse mechanical deck. "Who authorized rooftop batteries?" she asked. Wren answered too quickly. "No. 1. There are no batteries." Tessa turned her face toward him. "Then you knew what I was testing." Wren's lips flattened before he looked at Roman. She created a crisis to delay the refinancing vote. Roman's left hand closed around the breaker handle until the tendons stood beneath his skin. The vote remains at 7. Tessa wiped blue glycol across a white inspection cloth. Then keep this tower dark until I isolate that pump. A woman in her 70s called from the staircase that her husband depended on an oxygen concentrator. Tessa crossed to the emergency desk and opened the red tenant binder. She did not search blindly. Apartment numbers were marked by medical need, mobility limits, and backup power requirements because she had built the list herself after management refused to fund a digital registry. Move Mr. Ellis to the second-floor warming room. Plug his concentrator into circuit E2. That line belongs to life safety, not building automation. Wren reached for the binder. Tessa closed it beneath her palm. Resident medical information stays with operations. Roman stepped between Wren and the desk without touching either man. Her boundary stands. Tessa assigned 2 porters to elderly residents, ordered bottled water delivered to the stair landings, and redirected generator capacity from decorative lobby lighting to medical outlets. Roman listened without interrupting. His security chief waited for permission to speak. Roman kept his eyes on Tessa. Who has command? The question carried no warmth. It carried risk. Tessa met it without lowering her gaze. I do until the pressure drops, or you replace me with someone qualified. Roman removed a black access card from his wallet and set it on the desk. Mechanical authority is hers. Interfere and leave the building. Tessa entered the service corridor with Roman 2 steps behind her and Wren farther back. The corridor narrowed around insulated pipes, concrete walls, and exposed conduit. Roman's suit brushed against rusted valve wheels. Tessa's shoulders nearly touched both pipe banks. She moved with practiced economy, checking gauge faces by flashlight and listening before touching metal. At the west riser, she found the differential pressure 6 pounds above safe operating range. A remote pump was pushing against closed basement valves. If the pressure reached 12 more pounds, the oldest radiator branches could split inside occupied apartments. I need the roof isolated. Roman raised his radio. Static answered. Tessa tried her maintenance handset. The same dead carrier hissed back. The repeater is down. Wren lifted his phone. Cell service failed with the blackout. Tessa checked the signal indicator. No bars, but the emergency repeater had its own battery and a legal requirement to survive 4 hours. Power didn't kill communications. Someone did. Roman turned to his security chief. Seal the roof stairs. No one enters or leaves. Tessa caught Roman's sleeve before he moved. Her glove left a blue print on black wool. Do not seal both stairs. Pressure can turn that roof into a trap. Roman looked at her hand, then at her face. 1 stair remains open under your rule. They returned to the lobby as security restored a local monitor from an isolated battery cart. A technician connected the roof controller through a read-only cable. The screen showed an override at 1026 p.m. 8 minutes after Tessa said she had removed the controller fuse. Wren moved close enough for the emergency light to sharpen the satisfaction around his mouth. Display the credential. The technician enlarged the record. A biometric key appeared beside the command. Superintendent access Tessa Bell. A second window opened with roof entry footage. Tessa's figure crossed the mechanical deck in the same navy coveralls she wore now. Roman studied the screen. The muscles along his scarred left side pulled beneath his shirt as he shifted his weight. Tessa did not defend herself. She read the line twice, then pointed to the timestamp. Open the raw event sequence. The technician swallowed. That is the raw sequence. Tessa turned to Roman. No. That is what someone wants you to call raw. Above them, the hidden pump struck again. This time, the interval shortened to 6 seconds. Tessa's biometric credential remained on the monitor, while the pressure pulse accelerated above them. She took Roman's access card from the emergency desk and held it against the reader beside the maintenance office. The lock stayed dead. She removed a narrow steel key from inside her boot and opened the mechanical override instead. Ren watched the movement. Another unregistered key. Tessa pushed the door open with her shoulder. Mechanical rooms require access during electrical failure. The city calls that planning. Inside the office carried 20 years of paper ledgers, valve diagrams, and tagged fuse boxes. No polished screens. No cloud dashboard. Every manual override had a physical trail because Tessa's father had died in a boiler room where an owner claimed the warning records had disappeared. She opened the bound ledger to the evening's final entry. M. She had removed controller fuse. C4 photographed the empty socket and sealed the cabinet. 2 numbered tags documented the act. 1 remained stapled to the page. Its twin should still hang inside the electrical panel. The system says I sent a command after this fuse left the circuit. She tapped the paper with 1 blunt fingernail. Machines can log lies. Copper cannot carry power. It never received. Roman entered behind her. His shoulders nearly filled the doorway. The clean black lines of his suit looked severe against shelves coated in pipe dust. Tessa opened a steel cabinet and took out insulated gloves sized for her hands. Roman reached toward the ledger. She covered it with her forearm. Read it here. His eyes moved from her bruised wrist to the numbered tag. You think I will remove evidence? I think powerful men call removal protection when the object belongs to someone else. Roman withdrew his hand. It stays. Ren appeared in the doorway. The vote cannot wait while she performs theater. Tessa tore a blank evidence strip from a pad and wrote the time. Then stop watching me and find the second tag. Ren's gaze flicked toward the electrical cabinet before the label was visible from his position. Tessa noticed. She said nothing. Roman did not see the glance. He was studying the ledger entry, the timestamp, and her photograph of the empty fuse socket. Partial evidence still pointed both ways. A careful saboteur could create paperwork before issuing a remote command through another device. Tessa knew that. She refused the comfort of a premature victory. A porter called from the hall. Mrs. Landry on the 18th floor had begun shivering despite 3 blankets. Tessa closed the ledger and moved. Roman followed her into the service stairwell, while Ren remained with security. They climbed 2 floors to the warming room. Tessa's right knee struck pain through her leg each time she pushed upward, but she kept one hand on the rail and adjusted her pace instead of hiding the injury. Inside the emergency circuit, powered oxygen equipment, small heaters, and a battered coffee maker. 12 elderly residents sat in folding chairs. Tessa checked. Mrs. Landry's fingers wrapped a heated blanket around her shoulders and crouched until their eyes met. Your apartment is cold. This room is safe. You stay here until I clear the riser. Mrs. Landry squeezed her hand. They said, You broke the heat. Tessa fastened the blanket beneath the woman's chin. They have not proved that. Roman stood several feet away. No resident thanked him. 3 asked Tessa whether the pipes would hold. She answered, each with a floor-specific risk instead of reassurance. Roman had owned the tower for 9 years. Tessa knew which tenant kept insulin in a failing refrigerator and which widow refused elevators after midnight. At the warming room panel, Tessa measured the emergency current with a clamp meter. The circuit carried less than half its rated load. Somewhere else, A separate motor continued consuming power. She wrote the amperage in her pocket notebook and asked Roman for the building's utility account. Ren controls financial access. Tessa clipped the meter back onto her belt. The utility owns its interval meter. Your dashboard only copies it. Roman called his counsel and ordered a preservation request for the external records. His voice remained level. Obtain the original interval data. No Vale employee touches the request. Tessa looked at him for one measured second. He had followed her evidence boundary without trying to take control of the method. It earned him nothing personal. It changed the next move. Ask for 15-second intervals, not hourly totals. Roman repeated the instruction. Exactly. A young porter entered with bottled water and reached toward Tessa's shoulder to guide her away from a moving cart. She stepped aside before his hand landed. Use words, not my body. The porter flushed and lowered his arm. Roman watched the correction. He issued no threat and moved no employee. Tessa had handled her own boundary. Back in the basement plant, Tessa traced the reserve loop through an old laminated diagram. Vale Tower had been renovated repeatedly. Contractors had added digital controls without removing the analog piping beneath them. That made the building ugly to accountants and honest to mechanics. Tessa opened the archive cabinet and found a commissioning report from 2 decades earlier. The rooftop reserve line ended at 2 fixed coils. No crossover valve. No remote actuator. Yet the blue glycol in the lobby proved a new path existed. She and Roman climbed the service ladder behind Boiler 3. Fresh copper disappeared into an insulated chase labeled Abandoned. The solder joints had been painted with artificial grime, but the insulation glue still smelled sweet. Tessa scraped the edge with her thumbnail. The adhesive remained soft. Installed within months. Roman held the flashlight while she photographed each joint with a ruler in frame. Who approved it? Tessa angled the light toward a printed equipment label. The top layer had been rubbed with solvent. Beneath it, an etched serial number survived. Ren arrived with 2 security men and a tablet displaying Tessa's roof footage. Enough delay. Remove her access before she destroys more records. Tessa stayed on the ladder. Her full figure blocked the narrow chase, boots braced against steel rungs while she read the etched digits aloud. Roman raised one hand. The guards stopped before touching her. She finishes. Ren held up the tablet. Her face is on the roof. Tessa descended carefully and opened the old commissioning report beside the actuator. The report listed the device as original equipment installed 20 years earlier. She wiped the etched number with alcohol, then checked its manufacturing prefix against the service catalog stored in her maintenance binder. The prefix belonged to a product line released 18 months ago. She turned the label toward Roman. Your records call this actuator 20 years old. Its serial number says it was built last year. Roman moved the flashlight from the false label to Ren's face. Ren's thumb pressed hard enough against the tablet to whiten the nail. Tessa photographed that serial number too. The hidden pump struck above them, then stopped, as if someone had realized she had found its name. The hidden pump stopped because someone had heard Tessa read its serial number aloud. She stayed beside the fresh copper line while Roman ordered the basement doors sealed. Ren protested that the refinancing council would arrive within hours. Roman did not turn toward him. The vote survives evidence. Sabotage does not. Tessa photographed the actuator from 4 angles, then placed a strip of tamper tape across its removable cover. She wrote her initials over the seam and pressed the tape down with the back of her thumbnail. The glycol still needed an innocent explanation. A failed heat exchanger could contaminate 2 loops without deliberate interference. She refused to accuse anyone before eliminating that possibility. She shut the reserve isolation valve, opened a drain point, and filled 3 glass sample jars from separate sections of the system. One jar held residential water from the lobby riser. One held reserve glycol from the rooftop return. The third came from the heat exchanger outlet. Roman held the flashlight while Tessa compared the fluids against a white tile. The lobby sample carried a sharp blue tint. The reserve sample matched it. The exchanger sample remained nearly clear. The exchanger did not leak. Wren folded his arms. Color proves nothing. Tessa sealed each lid with numbered evidence tape. Then chemistry will embarrass me or you. She called Amara Lewis through the landline in the boiler office. The first connection opened for 2 seconds. Tessa heard breathing, then the line cut. She tried again. No. Dial tone. Roman checked his encrypted phone. It showed service, but every call returned to voicemail without ringing. Someone had not disabled the entire tower. Someone had isolated outgoing communication from mechanical and security zones while leaving Wren's tablet connected to the internal network. Tessa looked at the glowing screen in his hand. Your device still talks. Wren locked it. Board traffic uses a private channel. Then, open it. You lack clearance. Roman stepped between them. She has mine. Wren's thumb hovered above the screen, but no call left the device. Tessa no longer needed his refusal, explained. She needed proof of where the interference began. She led Roman to the communications cabinet and found the repeater battery fully charged. The antenna line had been unscrewed by hand, then placed back loosely enough to appear connected. Fresh skin oil shone around the brass fitting. She photographed it before touching anything. This was open tonight. Roman asked who held the cabinet key. Me, security, and the automation vendor. Wren answered from behind them. She just named herself first. Tessa turned. Because competent people do not hide from access records. She reconnected the antenna and tried the line again. A maintenance alert appeared on her handset before the call could complete. The actuator's service account had requested her inspection history. Someone on the vendor network knew she had found the new hardware. She printed the alert through the cabinet's local thermal printer, tore off the narrow strip, and slipped it inside her bound ledger. Wren watched the paper disappear. His expression remained controlled. His right shoe shifted toward the basement exit. Roman noticed the movement and blocked the doorway with one shoulder. Where? Wren lifted his tablet. To preserve the vote. Tessa held up the service alert. Your vendor searched for my records 30 seconds after I found its actuator. Wren's eyes moved across the printed time. Automated systems query maintenance data. Not while isolated from external service. Tessa turned to Roman. The private channel is carrying commands. Roman held out his hand for Wren's tablet. Unlock it. Wren complied after a pause. Too short to be called refusal, and too long to be called loyalty. The channel showed only board documents, security notices, and a vendor diagnostic connection marked routine. Tessa did not touch the screen. Routine connections do not need biometric concealment. Roman enlarged the record. The vendor session carried no employee name, only a device certificate. Wren offered a thin explanation. Third-party privacy. Tessa pointed to the certificate expiration. Issued yesterday. Valid for 12 hours. Someone built this window for tonight. The pump restarted above them. 3 hard pulses hit the riser, then the basement pressure gauge jumped. Tessa moved before anyone spoke. She opened the old mechanical map across the control table and traced the hidden line upward. The pressure was feeding into the north residential branch, the same branch serving Roman's family floor and 42 occupied apartments. If she closed the wrong valve, Radiators could burst behind plaster. If she waited, the crossover pump could force hot glycol through weakened seals. She needed the exact flow direction. Tessa touched the return pipe with the back of her wrist, then the supply. One warmed from above. The other cooled from below. The hidden pump was reversing the loop. She removed a small contact thermometer from her belt and clamped it onto both pipes. The numbers separated by 9 degrees within half a minute. It is pushing backward from the roof. Roman looked toward the ceiling as another pulse traveled down. What stops it? A manual isolation on 38. Wren spoke before Tessa could answer. That valve feeds your mother's floor. Tessa fixed her eyes on him. You knew the branch. Wren did not step back. I read the plans. Those plans call it abandoned. Roman's fingers closed around the edge of the table until the steel lip bent slightly beneath his grip. Wren changed his attack. She cuts that branch, and your mother loses heat before dawn. Tessa folded the map. I cut it, or the pressure opens the weakest apartment wall. Roman's gaze stayed on her face. How long? 90 seconds without interruption. He removed his suit coat and placed it over the chair beside her ledger. A pale burn scar crossed the skin above his shirt collar as he reached for the service radio. Security clears the path. She chooses the valve. Tessa climbed toward the 38th floor, with Roman and 2 guards behind her. Her bruised knee sent a hard line of pain up her thigh at every landing, but she did not surrender the lead. On 36, the stairwell radio died again. On 37, the emergency lights failed. Someone had cut the battery circuit floor by floor. Roman drew a compact pistol and handed his flashlight to Tessa. You work. I hold the door. She reached 38 and found the mechanical corridor locked by an electronic reader that should have opened under Roman's card. It rejected him. Tessa used her steel override key. Inside, the hidden line trembled against the wall. She followed it to a red valve wheel, installed behind a decorative panel. Fresh tool marks scarred the screws. The actuator above them increased speed. Tessa wrapped both hands around the wheel and turned. It resisted. She planted one boot against the wall, used the strength of her full body, and forced the valve through a quarter turn. Pressure screamed inside the pipe. Roman moved toward her. Do not touch me. He stopped. Your footing is mine. Tessa shifted her hips lower, locked her elbows, and completed the turn. The gauge fell. 9 pounds. 7. 5. The hammering slowed. Then every radiator on Roman's family floor began cooling at once. His phone lit with a security alert from his mother's apartment. Wren appeared on the stair landing below, breathing evenly despite the climb. She just shut down the family branch. Tessa pulled the valve handle free, so no one could reopen it remotely. I stopped a rupture. Wren raised his tablet. Edited footage already played on the screen. It showed Tessa entering the corridor, opening the concealed panel and closing the valve. The pressure alarms before her arrival were absent. The reverse flow readings were gone. Roman watched the clip while his mother's medical alert continued flashing. Tessa held the heavy valve handle against her chest. That video begins after the emergency. Wren looked at Roman. Or the emergency began because she entered. A second alert appeared. Roman's mother's apartment temperature had fallen below the medical threshold. Tessa reached for the radio. Only static answered. Someone had finally given Roman evidence. He could see pain he could measure, and a woman he could blame. Roman sent his personal physician to his mother's apartment, while Tessa remained under guard beside the sealed valve. The physician reported cold stress, not injury, but Wren used the phrase near hypothermia before the medical assessment finished. Tessa noticed the timing. He knew the conclusion he needed before the doctor gave it. She also knew Roman was not ready to hear that contradiction. His mother's hands had begun shaking inside her own home. His brother had died behind a locked fire door. Those facts pressed harder than Tessa's warning. Roman ordered temporary heaters, carried upstairs, then held out his palm. The valve handle. Tessa kept it. Not until the branch is pressure safe. You no longer decide alone. Then put a qualified mechanic beside me. Ren stepped closer. Security can restore the valve. Tessa looked at the smooth leather gloves on his hands. Security cannot balance a hydronic loop. Roman's voice cut between them. The handle stays with her until the gauge holds. Ren's mouth compressed around the failed challenge. For 3 minutes, the pressure remained stable. Tessa tagged the valve position, photographed the gauge, and finally placed the removable handle into Roman's hand. He did not look relieved. He looked divided. That made him more dangerous than anger. Back in the lobby, the security monitor displayed 3 separate records. Tessa's biometric credential had opened the roof door. Her face appeared on camera near the hidden bypass. Her manual shutdown had cut heat to the family floor. Ren added a 4th. He handed Roman a printed bank notice showing a deposit into the account of Tessa's widowed aunt. The transfer came from an equipment brokerage linked to the restructuring lender. Tessa read the routing number before she read the amount. My aunt does not use electronic deposits. Ren tapped the paper. Her name accepted this one. Tessa looked at the account suffix. It matched. The transaction was no crude invention. Someone had entered a real account through a legitimate financial channel. Roman asked the amount. Ren answered. 28,000. Tessa's shoulders remained square. Then, the sender wanted the number found. Ren spread the papers across the desk. A saboteur complains when the bribe is too obvious. Tessa turned to Roman. Freeze the funds. Preserve the bank's device log. Do not let your people call my aunt. Roman asked why. Because whoever opened that channel may be waiting for contact. Roman issued the freeze order through outside counsel. That decision protected the evidence, but it did not protect Tessa. Security brought the electrical cabinet copy of Tessa's fuse tag into the lobby inside a clear evidence sleeve. The seal was intact. The serial number matched her ledger. The tag proved she had removed the controller fuse at 1018. It did not prove she had not used a separate remote source at 1026. Ren placed a vendor report beside it. The report claimed Tessa's maintenance tablet had connected through a cellular gateway after the fuse removal. Roman read the device identifier. It matched the tablet locked in Tessa's office. Where is the tablet? A guard answered that it had disappeared. Ren did not look surprised. Tessa did. Roman caught the reaction. You did not take it. I left it charging at 9:40. Who knew? Anyone with the maintenance schedule? Ren lifted the biometric report. And anyone with her face apparently used her hand. The roof reader stored a palm vein template, not a simple fingerprint. Cloning it required either privileged vendor access or a captured biometric pattern. Tessa had enrolled during a system upgrade. Ren's office approved. She could see the shape of the frame now. It used her true access, her true protective shutdown, her aunt's true account, and a real device assigned to her. Each fact stood independently. Together they formed a lie strong enough to survive outrage. Roman asked the guard to remove her tool belt. Tessa stepped back. No one strips equipment from my body without stating the charge. Roman held her gaze. Sabotage. Financial collusion. Endangerment of residents. Each word landed with the weight of formal authority. Tessa unfastened the belt herself and placed it on the desk. Then preserve every item under camera. Roman ordered 2 cameras activated, and an external attorney called to witness the inventory. Wren objected that time was running. Roman did not acknowledge him. The belt was searched. A small remote transmitter appeared inside the side pouch beneath Tessa's insulated gloves. She had never seen it. Wren asked the technician to identify it. Compatible with the roof actuator. Tessa looked at the dust pattern inside the pouch. The transmitter had been pressed against tools but carried no grease, no rust, and no blue glycol. Bag it separately. Whoever planted it handled clean equipment. Wren answered before the technician. Or she cleaned it. Tessa turned toward him. You know the actuator's housing is clean. Wren stopped speaking. Roman noticed this time. His eyes moved from Wren to the transmitter, but doubt was not reversal. His mother had suffered. The records aligned. The object had come from Tessa's belt. He could not clear her, because one man talked too quickly. Roman removed the black access card from Tessa's hand and placed it on the desk. Your authority is suspended. Tessa's fingers remained open after the card left them. Then, assign a licensed replacement before restarting that branch. Wren will coordinate the vendor. Wren should not touch the system. Roman's expression changed by less than an inch, the scarred side of his torso stiffening beneath his shirt. You are accused, not appointed judge. Tessa stepped close enough that the dead crystal lights reflected faintly across his steel watch. And you are frightened, not qualified. 2 guards shifted behind her. Roman raised one hand without looking at them. They stopped. Tessa continued. You can remove me. You cannot make wrong pressure become safe. Roman looked toward the staircase where his mother's physician waited. Escort her out. The order carried no violence in its wording. The humiliation supplied the rest. The same guards who had dragged Tessa into the lobby now walked beside her past residence she had moved to safety. One man reached for her elbow. She pulled away. Hands off. He obeyed, only after Roman said it again. Tessa crossed the marble floor under emergency, lighting her coveralls stained with blue antifreeze, her wrists bruised, her tool belt sealed behind her. Mrs. Landry rose from a folding chair and asked who would keep the pipes from breaking. Tessa looked back at Roman. Ask the man who chose the dashboard. Roman's face did not move. His left hand pressed once against the old burn beneath his shirt. Tessa walked through the service exit without lowering her head. Cold rain struck her braid and darkened the shoulders of her coveralls. Security denied her access to the underground garage. Her truck remained inside. The public sidewalk gate had been locked under the blackout protocol. A guard directed her toward a maintenance passage connecting the tower to an adjacent loading bay. Tessa knew every corridor in the property. That one should have remained open for fire egress. The emergency bar failed when she pushed it. Someone had disabled the latch. She turned and found the security door behind her closing. 2 men in vendor jackets entered from the loading side before the lock caught. Neither wore Vale security badges. One held a pry bar. The other carried a clear evidence sleeve. Inside it was the twin fuse tag from the electrical cabinet. Give us the ledger copy. The taller man extended his hand. You leave breathing. Tessa backed toward a steam riser while measuring the corridor. 8 feet wide. 1 floor drain. Overhead relief pipe. Manual washdown valve at shoulder height. Her right knee hurt. Her left forearm remained uninjured. She did not need to overpower either man. She needed to change the space. That tag belongs in Roman's custody. Not anymore. The shorter man lifted the pry bar. Tessa pulled the washdown valve. Cold water blasted from the ceiling pipe, striking both men across the face and slicking the painted floor. The tallyman lunged. Tessa stepped sideways, caught his wrist against the riser, and used his momentum to drive his forearm into the valve wheel. The evidence sleeve tore against the metal. The fuse tag split through its numbered center. Half dropped near the drain. The other half remained inside the man's fist. Tessa kicked the drain cover loose with her steel-toed boot. Water swirled toward the opening. The shorter man swung the pry bar. She ducked beneath it, grabbed the fallen half tag, and jammed the metal drain cover beneath the emergency door. The door could no longer seal. She pushed through the gap as the taller man recovered. Rain flooded the loading bay. Tessa ran only far enough to reach the exterior fire pull. She broke the glass with her wrenchless fist wrapped in her sleeve. The local alarm released every egress lock. She disappeared into the alley with half of the physical tag pressed against her bruised palm, while behind her, one of Wren's men called the tower and reported that the accused superintendent had attacked them while stealing evidence. The fire alarm released every exterior lock, and 3 floors above the loading bay, a radiator branch split inside an occupied apartment. Water struck the plaster hard enough to punch through the ceiling below. 2 elevators stopped between floors when the pressure surge flooded a controller cabinet. Roman reached the mechanical desk as residents crowded the service stairs, and Wren's replacement technician tried to restart the north loop from the digital panel. The screen showed every valve open. The basement gauges showed 2 closed branches and 1 rising past its safe limit. Roman pulled the technician away by the back of his jacket before the man could issue another command. "Touch nothing. You cannot verify." Wren entered carrying the report from the loading passage. It accused Tessa of assaulting 2 contractors, stealing evidence, and triggering the alarm to escape. Roman read the page once. "Where are the men?" Wren said they were receiving treatment off-site. "Bring them back." Wren's fingers paused against the edge of his tablet. "They are witnesses, not prisoners." Roman placed the report on the wet desk. "Then they may choose which they become." A porter shouted that 6 residents remained trapped inside elevator 4. The replacement technician suggested rebooting the car. Roman looked at the water spreading beneath the controller cabinet and did not allow it. He opened Tessa's red tenant binder instead. A handwritten card had been clipped behind the elevator section. It listed the manual brake release sequence required staffing and the warning that elevator 4's counterweight drifted 7 inches after power loss. Tessa had recorded the defect 3 weeks earlier. Wren's capital office had denied the repair. Roman sent 2 trained mechanics to the machine room and ordered security to open the lobby doors for emergency ventilation. Wren reached toward the binder. "That information belongs to Vale Holdings." Roman closed his hand over the cover. "It belongs to the people still breathing because she wrote it." He found the rejected repair request beneath the card. Wren's electronic approval mark appeared beside the denial. "Cost deferred until refinancing." Roman lifted the paper. "You delayed this." Wren did not blink. "Temporary repairs. Past inspection." Tessa signed no such statement. She reported through maintenance. Roman searched the attached documents. The approval packet contained Tessa's typed name, but no physical tag, no photograph, and no ink entry in her bound ledger. Her stable habit had been missing from the record that supposedly carried her consent. Roman returned to the evidence table. The controller fuse remained inside its sealed sleeve. The cabinet twin tag had disappeared during the loading bay attack, yet the security log claimed Tessa had taken it after leaving the tower. Roman asked for the corridor access sequence. The chief displayed 4 events. Two vendor credentials entered the passage 6 minutes before Tessa. Her employee credential never opened the exterior door. The local fire pool released it. The report says she brought the men inside. Roman pointed at the timestamps. The doors say they waited for her. Wren answered that credentials could be cloned. Roman turned the statement over slowly. Now cloning is possible. Wren shifted his weight. Under hostile conditions, anything is possible. Roman placed Tessa's biometric roof record beside the vendor access sequence. Convenient. The chief attempted to explain that the passage camera had failed. Roman asked when. The outage began 14 seconds before the contractors entered and ended after Tessa pulled the alarm. A clean blackout surrounding only the attack. Wren called it further proof of her planning. Roman did not answer. He took the loading report, folded it once, and slid it into his inner pocket instead of returning it to Wren. Outside counsel called with the utility preservation result. The external meter had recorded a repeating motor load throughout Roman's full building blackout. It rose every 6 seconds, the same interval Tessa had counted from the lobby radiator. The load began before she entered the rooftop corridor and continued while Roman watched her close the isolation valve. Vale's dashboard reported no roof pump during that period. Roman ordered the original meter file placed under third-party seal. The attorney warned that the data showed a hidden electrical source but not who controlled it. Preserve first. Interpret later. Roman set down the phone and examined the fuse record. The central system credited Tessa with issuing a command at 1026. The physical controller had lost its fuse at 1018. The utility meter proved a separate motor source was active. That did not clear her completely. It destroyed the claim that her normal workstation had sent the command. Wren had presented the digital log as direct proof. Roman looked across the lobby. Wren was already telling the board liaison that the sabotage came through Tessa's maintenance tablet. He had shifted mechanisms before anyone had released the external meter result. Roman called the security chief into the darkened conference room and shut the door. He wrote 3 locations on separate index cards. East Penthouse Manifold. West Cooling Chase. 41st floor fire tank. Each card named a different place where the actuator's factory memory might be recovered. He gave the east location to Wren, told the security chief west, and sent the fire tank location through the vendor channel. No one shares what they received. The chief asked what Roman expected. Movement. 20 minutes later, a roof camera restored through a local battery showed 2 contractors entering the east penthouse manifold with a solvent kit and a portable grinder. They used a maintenance authorization issued by Wren's office 9 minutes earlier. Roman watched them approach equipment that did not exist. Wren entered the conference room before security summoned him. The east manifold is being destroyed. Roman looked at the closed door behind him. No one told you it mattered. Wren stopped 1 step inside. His face remained composed, but his hand closed around the authorization tablet until the leather case creased. I inferred the risk. Roman stood. You inferred my private location and sent men before confirming it. Wren lifted his chin. I protected evidence. Roman stepped around the table. You moved against bait. The chief received a second call from the loading bay. 1 injured contractor had abandoned his phone inside a service locker. The device contained a photograph of Tessa leaving the tower and a message ordering both men to retrieve the paper tag before she reached an independent inspector. The sender used an encrypted vendor account. It did not identify Wren. It proved someone had hunted Tessa for evidence Roman had ordered, preserved. Roman took his coat from the chair. Wren moved toward the door. The refinancing vote begins in 4 hours. Roman handed the chief a written command. Wren's building access was reduced to the board level, his device copied under external supervision, and every contractor tied to the automation vendor was detained inside the tower. Wren read the command without touching it. You are risking receivership for a superintendent accused by 4 records. Roman buttoned his coat over the burn scar along his ribs. 3 records are compromised. The 4th sent men after her. He ordered the chief to keep the tower stable through Tessa's paper procedures. Then he walked into the rain to find the woman he had removed and the half of the evidence someone was willing to kill for. Tessa reached the local 87 pipefitters workshop before midnight, with rain inside her boots and blood drying across the knuckles of her right hand. Amara Lewis locked the steel door behind her, photographed the bruises on both wrists, and placed the torn half-tag beneath a clear evidence cover without touching it. The paper showed Tessa's initials, part of the serial number, and the jagged tear where the contractor's sleeve had split. Amara cooled the steam-red skin along Tessa's left forearm, where the loading bay riser had vented during her escape. The burn remained shallow, but flexing the wrist pulled at it. You need a clinic. Tessa accepted the sterile dressing. After the sample is sealed, Amara looked at the blue glycol jar Tessa had carried beneath her coveralls. You crossed a city block with contaminated evidence. I crossed one alley. Then I called you from a grocery phone. Your chain is ugly. Tessa placed her bound ledger beside the jar. Ugly is not broken. Amara documented the time, location, container seal, and every person who had handled it. She refused to certify the sample until she could compare it with an independently collected source. Tessa nodded. That is why I came. Roman arrived without a convoy. One armored sedan stopped outside the workshop, while 2 guards remained on the sidewalk. He entered alone after Amara opened the door. Rain had darkened the shoulders of his black overcoat. A small cut marked one knuckle fresh enough that he had struck something on the way there. Tessa did not ask what. Roman saw the dressing on her forearm and the bruises left by his guards. He removed his coat, set it over a metal chair, and kept 6 feet between them. The men in the passage used Wren's vendor network. Tessa continued labeling the evidence cover. That does not prove Wren sent them. He acted on information given only to him. That proves he moved against your test. Roman placed the external meter report on the table. The roof pump drew power during the blackout. Tessa read the utility seal before the graph. Original server, preserved by outside counsel. She looked at him then. You followed the chain. Too lot. The words carried no defense. Tessa returned the report. Late evidence still needs handling. Roman extended a black access card. She did not take it. Your tower removed my authority in public. It does not return in private. Roman set the card on the table and opened a document folder. Inside was a signed emergency command transferring all mechanical decisions, resident safety orders, and evidence preservation procedures to Tessa through the conclusion of the dawn vote. It barred Vale security from touching her without immediate physical necessity. It required 2 independent witnesses for every search or seizure. It also gave her the right to suspend Roman's access to any mechanical zone if his presence endangered the operation. Tessa read every page. Revocable. Roman pointed to the last clause. Only by you or the municipal inspector. Amara checked the signature and corporate seal. He surrendered operational control. Tessa looked at Roman. Not personal control. You set that boundary. Say it. Roman's eyes remained level with hers. I protect the evidence. I do not own the person holding it. Tessa signed beneath the acceptance line, then took the access card. The transfer restored no trust. It created enforceable leverage. That was enough to move. They returned to Vale Tower through the Union service van, because Tessa refused Roman's armored car. Amara sat beside the sealed glycol sample. Roman followed in his sedan and did not challenge the arrangement. At the loading entrance, Tessa stopped before crossing the threshold. The two guards who had dragged her through the lobby stood behind the security desk. One lowered his eyes. The other began an apology. Tessa held up her bandaged arm. "Save it for the public record." Roman handed the chief a suspension order. Both guards surrendered their weapons and badges under camera. He did not ask Tessa to accept the action as repair. She entered the tower, reclaimed her tool belt after inspecting each sealed item, and rejected the transmitter found in her pouch until Amara documented it separately. The device carried no glycol, no boiler dust, and no skin oil from Tessa's gloves. Its battery had been installed less than an hour before the lobby search. Suspicion moved away from possession and toward planting, but the installer remained unknown. Tessa led Amara and Roman to the basement sample points. Amara collected new fluid from the residential return, the rooftop reserve line, and the heat exchanger outlet. She used city-issued bottles, fresh gloves, and serialized seals. A portable refractometer measured glycol concentration. The residential return and reserve loop matched within a fraction of a percentage. The exchanger outlet did not. Amara added a fluorescent tracer test under ultraviolet light. The same green marker appeared in both contaminated samples. That marker belonged to a restricted freeze protection batch supplied to one contractor. The automation company Wren had approved for an unlisted retrofit. Roman asked whether the result proved sabotage. Amara capped the samples. "It proves these systems were connected. It proves the chemical came from the contractor's batch. It does not prove who ordered the connection." Tessa pointed to the hidden actuator serial. "Then we recover the service record." The actuator cover still carried Tessa's tamper tape. No one had opened it after she sealed the seam. She photographed the intact initials, then cut the tape while Amara recorded. Inside, they found a removable service module. Its visible memory had been wiped. The reset time matched the minute after Tessa read the serial aloud in the basement. Roman's fingers curled once at his side. Tessa did not let him touch the module. She removed the cable shield and found a ceramic chip beneath it, separate from the editable service memory. The chip stored only factory events, installation date, commissioning token, and maintenance certificates. It could not show motive. It could identify the authorized installer. Tessa connected a manufacturer-approved reader that Amara had brought from the municipal evidence kit. The token resolved to Arden Building Automation under an emergency retrofit authorization issued by Vale Restructuring. The approving office belonged to Wren. The named field technician was one of the men who had attacked Tessa in the loading passage. Roman read the authorization twice. Wren approved the installer. His vendor hid the crossover. His men tried to recover the tag. Tessa removed the reader and resealed the ceramic chip. That completes the technical layer, not the conspiracy. Roman looked toward the ceiling where the board mezzanine waited, above 40 dark floors. What remains? Intent and benefit. Tessa opened the utility report beside the refinancing packet Roman had brought. The hidden pump drew its first test load 6 weeks earlier. On the same day, Wren's office accelerated the building's default inspection and changed the lender's remedy from a cash penalty to immediate receivership. She traced the clause with one finger. The sabotage was not built to kill heat tonight. It was built to make the tower fail inspection at the exact moment the loan expired. Roman asked who benefited from receivership. The packet named a special-purpose lender hidden behind 2 holding companies. Tessa closed the file. Find the human owner. Roman reached for his phone. She stopped him with a look. Outside chain. No Vale server. No family accountant. Roman called the court-appointed monitor and repeated her limits without changing a word. As he spoke, the pressure gauge beside Tessa dropped 2 pounds without any valve movement. Someone had reopened the rooftop bypass through a secondary actuator they had not yet found. Tessa marked the time in her ledger. Ren knows we recovered the first token. Roman ended the call. Then he will move. Tessa picked up her wrench with her uninjured hand. Good. This time, we choose where. The second actuator opened somewhere above them, and Tessa refused to chase it blindly. She stood over the basement diagram, with her bandaged left forearm held clear of the hot pipes, and divided the tower into 3 pressure zones. Roman's security chief received 1 location, the unused fire tank above 40. Amara received another, the west cooling chase behind the mechanical penthouse. Ren received a 3rd through the board channel, the east domestic water manifold. Each location could plausibly conceal the secondary actuator. Only one was real. Tessa marked each message with a different harmless technical error. The chief's version misnamed a valve size. Amara's reversed 2 pipe colors. Ren's described the actuator as pneumatic instead of electric. Whoever moves will repeat the mistake he received. Roman watched her write the messages by hand. And the true location. Tessa tapped the building's original blueprint, inside the abandoned expansion tank above the roof pump. No digital record mentions it. Roman called for men to secure it. Tessa stopped him. No. We leave the door available. His fingers stayed over the radio button. That gives him access. It gives him a choice we can measure. Roman lowered the radio. Your trap. The court-appointed monitor returned the first ownership records before 5 in the morning. The shell lender belonged to a trust administered in Delaware, then to another company, registered through a nominee service. No human beneficiary appeared on the public filings. Tessa asked for the escrow instructions instead of the corporate chart. The tower's default payment would not remain inside the lender. It would transfer through a construction escrow, then release upon receivership to a land option company. Roman's counsel found 3 wire templates prepared, but not yet executed. The signer field required 2 approvals. One belonged to Vale's chief restructuring officer. The other belonged to an outside fiduciary whose identity remained masked until the vote. Tessa studied the document metadata printed by the monitor. The files had been created on Ren's office workstation, but creation did not prove he owned the destination. He could claim he prepared ordinary restructuring papers. Roman pointed to the release condition. The funds move only if the tower fails. That proves benefit exists. Not that he controls it. Tessa circled the masked fiduciary field. We need the person behind this approval, and we need Ren to believe we do not. Tessa built the mechanical fallback in the old boiler gallery, where Ren's automation contractor had replaced every visible control, but left the manual balancing valves intact. She assigned each floor to a numbered branch, and placed colored tags on 5 hand-operated valves. If the digital system forced a surge, the guards would close them in sequence under Amara's direction. No software. No remote command. No biometric key. The plan would divide the tower into smaller loops and keep pressure below the point where old radiator joints failed. Roman brought 6 guards into the gallery. Tessa looked at their tailored coats and clean gloves. Remove the coats. Learn the wheels. One man glanced at Roman. Roman took off his own jacket first and folded it across a pipe rack. Follow her. Tessa demonstrated each turn with her uninjured hand, then made every guard repeat the sequence until they could perform it in darkness. Roman's first attempt stopped half a turn early. Tessa pushed the valve back to its starting point. Again. He repeated the movement without argument. Sweat darkened the collar beneath his white shirt. The old burn along his ribs pulled when he reached overhead, but he completed the sequence exactly. Tessa wrote his time in the ledger beside the others. No praise. No exception. The controlled messages produced movement within 23 minutes. A vendor credential entered the East domestic water manifold, the false location sent only to Wren. 2 security cameras failed at the same moment. The repair team carried a compact thermal cutter and repeated the phrase, "pneumatic actuator," over the radio. Tessa heard Wren's planted error come back through the speaker. Roman's chief requested permission to detain them. Observe first. Tessa moved the live building map aside. They are looking for something that does not exist. Let them prove who directs the search. The contractors opened 3 cabinets, photographed each interior, and sent the images through the private board channel. A message returned seconds later. Wrong manifold. Search the expansion vessel. Wren had learned the first location was bait and redirected them toward the real hiding place without anyone inside the control room, naming it. Roman's hand closed around the edge of the desk. Tessa read the sender certificate. It belonged to the masked outside fiduciary on the escrow documents. Same channel. Same device. Trust. Roman reached for the arrest order. Tessa shook her head. Not yet. We have connection. We still need control and intent. He stared at the contractors moving toward the roof. They are approaching the evidence. Then we decide what they find. Amara sealed the original ceramic service module inside a municipal evidence box and replaced it with an empty housing carrying a copied serial label. Tessa hid the real module beneath the removable base of the old expansion tank inside a dry compartment that required a quarter-turn pressure release before opening. She documented the placement on an analog instant photograph, signed it across the white border, and gave the photograph to Amara. Roman received no copy. You do not trust me with the location. Tessa closed the tank panel. I trust controlled information. Roman accepted the answer and stationed his men outside the roof stairs instead of inside the pump room. Wren's contractors would be allowed to enter under camera. Once they touched the decoy, their tools and instructions would connect them to evidence destruction. Roman asked what prevented them from destroying the entire room. Tessa pointed to the manual relief pipe running into the storm drain. If they cut the main feed, the pressure falls through this line. The roof loop dies without opening a tenant branch. She wrapped a non-conductive maintenance belt around the relief wheel and secured the free end to the railing. With her burned forearm, she could not pull the wheel safely from close range. The belt would let her release it from behind the concrete barrier. That is the fallback. Roman looked at the thin strap. And if it snaps, then I use the second one in my pocket. He did not offer to stay beside her. She had assigned him to the board mezzanine to preserve the vote and stop Wren from canceling the event once the trap closed. At 6:12, the monitor identified the masked fiduciary. It was not Wren. It was a private trust officer whose firm had processed 3 unrelated properties Wren had driven into emergency receivership. The same land option company purchased all 3 after default. Wren's personal foundation received consulting donations within 30 days of each sale. The pattern established motive, but every payment passed through legal charities and consulting entities. Wren could still argue coincidence. Tessa instructed the monitor to withhold the result from the board packet. Then she prepared a false update, claiming the fiduciary identity remained unknown and that the actuator token had already been transferred off-site. Roman read the statement. You are inviting him to destroy what he thinks is our only direct link. Tessa placed the page in his hand. You will reject my conclusions in public. He needs to believe you chose the loan over me. Roman's thumb rested against the edge of the paper. That repeats what I did. This time, I set the terms. He signed the false update. At 6:18, the hidden roof pump started again. At 6:19, Wren requested an emergency board motion, removing Tessa from the tower before the vote. Roman granted Wren's motion in the lobby, before the assembled board residents and refinancing council. Tessa stood beneath the dead crystal fixtures in clean work clothes, borrowed from the union shop. Her full figure filled the navy coveralls without apology. The bandage on her left forearm remained visible. Bruises ringed both wrists. Roman faced the board in a black suit, with the same blue glycol stain still faintly marked across one sleeve. Tessa Bell's operational authority is suspended. Wren's shoulders lowered by a fraction. The relief lasted less than a second, but Tessa saw it. Roman continued. Her conclusions remain unverified. The vote proceeds under restructuring control. Wren placed both hands flat on the conference table. Then remove her access. Roman held out his palm. Tessa placed the black card against it. Their fingers did not touch. You know my boundary. Her words carried farther than the board microphones. Roman closed his hand around the card. It stands. He ordered security to escort her toward the roof service level, publicly framing the movement as removal, while privately leaving the western stair under her command. Wren believed Roman had chosen control. The board believed Tessa had lost. Only Amara and 2 trained guards at the manual valves knew the rejection was bait. Wren moved immediately. The contractors entered the rooftop pump room using a vendor credential tied to the private fiduciary channel. They found the decoy service module inside the actuator housing and placed it beneath the thermal cutter. Tessa watched through an analog inspection mirror positioned behind a pipe bend because every camera in the room had failed. Orange light flashed across the metal. The empty module blackened and split. One contractor photographed the damage. The image traveled through Wren's board tablet while he sat 3 floors below, arguing that the technical evidence had become unreliable. Tessa used a handheld radio wired through the restored emergency repeater. Decoy destroyed. Hold positions. Amara answered from the basement. Samples remained sealed. Roman did not respond. He could not speak without exposing the operation. Tessa moved toward the old expansion tank to recover the real ceramic token before the contractors searched deeper. Her right knee resisted when she crouched. She shifted her weight onto the stronger leg and reached for the quarter-turn pressure release. A steel fire door slammed behind her. The contractors had installed a portable magnetic lock on the outside. One of them emerged from behind the pump bank, with the thermal cutter still glowing. Give us the real module. Tessa kept her hand near the relief belt. You burned what you came for. Wren said you would hide a second memory. The man's statement was not a confession of motive. It was enough to prove knowledge traveled from Wren into the room. Tessa's radio transmitter blinked red. The signal had been jammed locally. The contractor stepped closer and raised the cutter toward the expansion tank. Open it. Tessa placed herself between the tool and the panel. Cut that vessel and the roof loop ruptures. Then open it. She looked at the pressure gauge. 11 pounds above the normal roof differential. The second actuator was forcing glycol against the closed branch. Wren's contingency had begun. If the gauge climbed 4 more pounds, the weakest joint would fail. The contractors expected Tessa to surrender the token to protect the tower. They had finally understood her well enough to weaponize her boundary. In the lobby, Wren presented the destroyed decoy image to the board. He claimed Tessa had contaminated and concealed the actuator evidence before Roman removed her. He moved for an immediate vote, while the tower remained mechanically unstable. The court-appointed monitor objected that the financial ownership review was incomplete. Wren invoked the loan deadline. At 7, the lender takes control without consent. Roman sat at the head of the table and gave no visible sign that Tessa was trapped above them. The security chief placed a handwritten pressure reading beside him. 14 pounds above normal. Roman's index finger pressed into the paper until the corner tore. He could send armed men to the roof and trigger the rupture. He could stop the vote and activate automatic receivership. He followed Tessa's plan instead. Continue the motion. Residents watching from the stairwell shouted that he had sacrificed their superintendent to preserve his tower. Roman did not defend himself. His role was to keep Wren inside the public process and away from the mechanical response. Wren began distributing signature pages. The digital board archive erased its own vendor channel history during the transfer. Every message connecting his device to the contractors vanished from the Vale server. On the roof, Tessa pulled the non-conductive belt. The relief wheel resisted. Pressure held it against the seat. Her burned left arm could not add strength without reopening the wound. She looped the second belt through the first, wrapped both around a steel stanchion, and used her body as the lever. Her boots slid an inch across the wet floor. The full strength of her hips and legs loaded the strap, while her arms only guided it. The wheel moved 1/8 of a turn. Hot vapor struck the drain line. The gauge dropped 1/2 pound, then climbed again because the remote actuator increased speed. The contractor, with the cutter, moved toward her. Tessa released one hand from the belt, kicked the loose inspection ladder into his path, and forced another quarter turn before he recovered. The relief pipe roared. Pressure fell through. 12 pounds 10, 8. The hidden pump lost suction. Its casing rattled. The contractor grabbed her bandaged forearm. Pain tore through the dressing. Tessa drove her shoulder into his chest, pinned his wrist against the railing, and used the remaining belt loop to lock his arm to the stanchion. She did not fight the second man. She opened the floor drain sluice. Glycol water spread across the steel deck. His polished work boots lost traction and carried him into the pump housing. The thermal cutter struck the wet floor and shut down under its safety circuit. Tessa reached the expansion tank. She turned the pressure release 1/4 rotation, the same precise movement she had used in the lobby, and opened the dry compartment. The evidence box was gone. Only Amara's signed instant photograph remained beneath the base plate. Someone had reached the real token before the contractors entered. Tessa checked the tamper mark. The panel had been opened with Amara's municipal key. Her radio remained jammed, but the old fire phone beside the roof door used a hard copper line. Tessa lifted the receiver. Not on. The wire had been cut inside the wall. Below her, the pump stopped entirely. The relief plan had saved the residential branches. It had also killed heat to the tower minutes before the vote. Security forced the magnetic lock and entered the room. Roman's chief found Tessa standing over the empty compartment, while one contractor remained strapped to the railing and the other crawled away from the disabled cutter. "Where is Amara?" Tessa asked. The chief stared at the signed photograph. "She left the basement with the evidence 20 minutes ago." Tessa looked toward the dead fire phone. No. Someone used her key. At 6:52, Wren displayed a burned ceramic chip to the board and claimed it was the final actuator memory recovered from Tessa's hiding place. Its surface had melted beyond inspection. Amara had disappeared. The utility load data remained valid, but no longer identified the person who ordered the pump. The chemical sample linked the sabotage to Wren's contractor, but not to Wren himself. The digital vendor messages had been erased. Roman received the roof report as Wren placed the refinancing resolution before him. Tessa entered the lobby 8 minutes before the deadline. Her left sleeve wet with blood, her right knee stiff, and the signed photograph held above her head. Every face turned toward the woman Roman had publicly removed. She walked past him without stopping and placed the photograph beside Ren's burned chip. "That is not the factory token." Ren spread his hands. "Then produce the real one." Tessa studied the photograph's white border. Amara had signed across it, but the final stroke cut through the image at an angle she never used. A second message had been hidden in the pressure gauge reflected behind the evidence box. The needle pointed to a value impossible for a depressurized compartment. It was not a reading. It was a floor number. Tessa lifted her eyes toward the board mezzanine. Amara moved the token before they took her. Roman rose. "Where?" Tessa pointed toward the dark elevator shaft. "Inside the one recorder. Ren cannot erase without stopping this vote." Tessa pointed toward elevator 4, and the burned chip on Ren's table stopped being evidence. The number in Amara's photograph was 4. She placed the instant image beneath the board lamp and traced the reflected pressure gauge without touching its surface. The needle indicated 4 pounds on a compartment that had already been depressurized. It was not a mechanical reading. It was an instruction. Elevator 4 had stalled earlier when water entered its controller cabinet, but its crash recorder remained alive on an independent fire service battery. The recorder sat behind a city seal inside the machine room. Cutting its power would trigger an automatic fire recall, open the lobby exits, and suspend the refinancing vote under the lender's own safety clause. Ren could erase Vale's servers. He could not touch that recorder without destroying the deadline he needed. Ren slid the signature pages toward Roman. "This is speculation designed to waste 8 minutes." Tessa planted both palms on the table, one bandaged, the other marked by dried blood. "Then, let the sealed recorder prove me wrong." Roman looked at the clock. 7 minutes remained. "Open it under witnesses." The elevator, chief court-appointed monitor, and Roman's outside counsel entered the machine room together. Tessa followed at a measured pace, because her right knee no longer bent without resistance. The city seal on elevator 4's recorder remained intact. Its serial matched the annual inspection certificate in Tessa's paper ledger. The chief photographed the seal, cut it, and removed the recorder cover. A ceramic service module rested inside the crash memory cavity beside Amara's municipal evidence label. The module's original evidence tape remained unbroken. Beneath it lay a second message written on the backing paper. "Machine room, west door." Roman's security chief crossed the narrow platform and forced open a utility closet blocked by a steel tool cart. Amara sat inside, with her wrists bound by plastic ties. Her city badge and municipal key were gone, but her voice stayed steady. "I moved the token at 6:29. 2 vendor men took my key at 6:34. I never opened the rooftop compartment again." The recorder supported her timeline. It logged her city service key at 6:28, then Ren's contractor credential 6 minutes later. The men had taken her key after she protected the evidence. They had used it to manufacture the false chain on the roof. Tessa carried the sealed module back into the lobby herself. Roman walked beside her, but he neither touched the evidence nor cleared a path with threats. He ordered the board guards behind the residence and placed his own body between Ren's security detail and the presentation table. She finishes. No one interrupts. Tessa opened with the physical facts. Her duplicate fuse tag proved the controller lost local power at 1018. The utility-owned meter proved the hidden pump ran afterward on an independent source. The sealed glycol samples proved the reserve circuit had been deliberately connected to residential heat. The actuator serial proved recent installation beneath an old equipment label. The factory token identified Ren's approved vendor, the same technician who attacked her for the missing paper tag. She laid the bank device report beside her aunt's transfer. The account had been accessed from a commercial enrollment terminal, registered to the lender's trust officer, not from her aunt's home phone or bank branch. The money entered her account. She never accepted it. The false payment had been built to be discovered. Ren waited until she reached the financial documents. Then he stood with both hands visible. A contractor installed unauthorized equipment. A trust officer opened a fraudulent account channel. None of that establishes my instruction. His voice carried cleanly through the lobby. I approved hundreds of vendors. I prepared default documents because restructuring was my job. Miss Bell has proven negligence, not conspiracy. Several board members looked toward the clock. 3 minutes remained. Tessa did not argue with his strongest point. She agreed with it. Approval alone is not intent. She opened the ceramic module through a manufacturer-approved reader, while Amara watched the seal. The factory log listed the actuator's commissioning certificate, and the certificate used to schedule its final pressure cycle. Both belonged to the temporary device credential, installed on Ren's board tablet the previous afternoon. The same certificate had sent contractors toward the East domestic water manifold after Roman disclosed that false location only to Ren. Vale's server copy had been erased, but Roman's preservation order had reached the private carrier before deletion. The carrier receipt remained outside Ren's control. Tessa placed the authenticated receipt beside the token. Both contained the same certificate fingerprint. Your tablet directed the search. Your certificate armed the pump. Your shell lender collected the default. Ren looked at the module then, toward the mezzanine exit. His right hand moved beneath the table. Roman's security chief raised his weapon. Tessa snapped one command. Do not shoot near the pressure glass. Ren's fingers came back empty, but the pre-programmed contingency had already reached its deadline. Pipes struck behind the walls. Once. Twice. The lobby gauge climbed. On the basement radio, Amara reported simultaneous pressure across 3 residential branches. Ren had designed the surge to force evacuation before the board could reject his loan. Tessa did not touch the digital panel. Manual team. Sequence red. 6 guards turned the basement wheels in the order she had drilled into their hands. Hold 3 seconds. Close amber. Leave blue open. Roman repeated nothing. He kept the board seated, blocked Ren's men from the staircase, and allowed Tessa's instructions to own the building. Pressure rose another pound. The old pipes groaned above the tenants. Tessa listened to the interval, not the alarms. North branch is reflecting. Reopen red. 1/4. The guard obeyed. The surge divided into the empty reserve tank, then drained through the rooftop relief line she had prepared. The lobby gauge fell below rupture range. No radiator opened. No tenant lost an escape route. The contingency became one more verified act tied to Ren's scheduled certificate. The clock reached 7, while the tower remained occupied and mechanically stable. The lender could no longer claim forced evacuation. The court-appointed monitor suspended the receivership documents because their beneficiary had failed disclosure and used falsified safety events. Board members withdrew their signatures one by one. Ren tried to step toward the exit. Roman moved into his path. He did not strike him. He removed Ren's board credential, private security authority, and family protection card, then placed all 3 beside Tessa's evidence. Your access ends here. Ren's fingers trembled once before he hid them behind his back. Roman ordered him held under external counsel's custody until the financial monitor completed the record. No hidden room. No convenient execution. No confession. Tessa had built a case that did not need his cooperation. As the first gray daylight reached the dead crystal fixtures, Roman looked toward the main breaker. Tessa stopped him. "The tower stays dark until I sign the restart." Roman stepped away from the switch. "Your call." By noon, Calderon no longer controlled a bank account contractor or locked door in the city. The monitor froze the shell lender's escrow and traced its land options through the same trust officer used in 3 prior forced defaults. Roman cut Wren off from every union delegate, port, supervisor, and security company that had treated his name as authority. The automation technicians entered a formal evidence process under independent counsel. Amara transferred the sealed chemical samples and actuator module to municipal investigators. Vale's board referred the fraudulent transfer, beneficial ownership, concealment, and safety sabotage to financial prosecutors. Roman did not erase the criminal world around the tower. He used its leverage to keep witnesses alive, and then surrendered the records to people whose authority did not depend on him. Wren faced both systems without the protection he had purchased from either. The lobby reopened 3 days later for the residents, not for investors. Roman placed the accusation, report the suspension order, and every corrected finding on a long table beneath restored emergency lights. Tessa entered through the front doors in fresh navy coveralls, tailored for movement rather than concealment. The fabric followed her full waist, strong thighs, and broad hips, without asking her body to disappear. Her left forearm remained dressed. The bruises around her wrists had faded to yellow. Mrs. Landry sat in the first row beside Mr. Ellis and his oxygen concentrator. The 2 guards who had dragged Tessa stood without weapons near the security desk. Roman faced the residents and read the correction himself. Tessa Bell did not sabotage this tower. My order disgraced her without a proven chain. I was wrong. He did not add an excuse. He terminated the contractor-controlled security policy, made the abuse findings part of the building's permanent record, and invited Tessa to speak before anyone else. Tessa presented the new safety structure in plain language. Independent meter access. Dual custody for biometric records. Paper overrides, preserved off-site. Tenant medical circuits protected from ownership disputes. No executive could delay an emergency repair without signing personal responsibility for the risk. Roman had funded an irrevocable tenant trust, with assets taken from the restructuring reserve. He had also surrendered Vale Holdings' exclusive control over mechanical inspections. That authority now belonged to Bell Building Safety, an independent company Tessa owned, with Amara as compliance director. Roman received no shares, no veto, and no right to cancel its contract after an adverse finding. This tower will not depend on one honest superintendent, Tessa told the residents. It will depend on rules. Dishonest owners cannot quietly remove. Roman stood behind the presentation table and did not interrupt once. When the meeting ended, one of the suspended guards returned Tessa's damaged employee badge in a clear envelope. The plastic had cracked when a chair leg crushed it during the dawn vote. The envelope slipped from his hand and slid beneath the front row. Roman bent before anyone else moved. His black suit touched the marble as he lowered one knee and reached beneath the chair. He picked up the broken badge, wiped dust from Tessa's photograph with his handkerchief, and rose only after she extended her palm. "It belongs to you." Tessa looked at the card. "It belonged to your company." She did not take it. Instead, she placed the charter of Bell Building Safety in his open hand. "This belongs to me." Roman closed his fingers around the document, not the woman standing before him. "Your terms stand." She pointed toward the badge. "Keep that where your board can see what obedience cost." Roman mounted it inside the lobby evidence case, beside the false biometric report. He found her that evening in the basement plant alone, except for the low circulation pumps. Roman stopped beyond the yellow safety line. He did not enter until she waved him forward. The contract is signed. Tessa checked the final pressure reading. Contracts are easier than trust. I know. No guards at my door. Agreed. No gifts that purchase access. Agreed. She looked at him over the edge of her clipboard. The black suit remained precise, but the man inside it waited instead of directing. Dinner may happen after my arm heals. Roman's hand settled against the old burn beneath his shirt, then dropped to his side. Public place. Tessa nodded. My transportation. My exit. Your choice. She signed the restart certificate and handed him the yellow copy. It was not forgiveness. It was permission for one next step. Roman stood beside the main breaker beneath the dead crystal fixtures. Residents gathered along the staircase, where they had once watched Tessa dragged across the marble. This time, she stood at the center of the lobby, with her shoulders square, her bound maintenance ledger beneath one arm, and the tower's operational charter in her hand. Roman rested his palm on the steel handle and waited. Tessa checked the pressure gauge Amara's sample seals and the emergency circuit indicator. Every physical system agreed with the record. She looked at Roman. Now, he raised the breaker. Warm light traveled upward floor by floor across the lobby, through the crystal fixtures and over the faces of the tenants who had trusted her before. The evidence forced powerful men to do the same. Roman left his hand off the controls. Tessa decided the tower was ready, and the tower answered to her proof. Subscribe for more mature Mafia romance stories where underestimated women protect their dignity, expose the truth, and decide what love must earn. Like the story, share it with someone who values strength, and tell us which moment stayed with you most.